Hello, everyone, and welcome to Yuricon 2023. And yes, don't adjust your set. Erica has not become magically more moisturized. This is someone completely different. I am Ashley Payne, and I am here for to handle this very specific panel of a trans view of Yuri. And I'm here with three other wonderful people, and I'd just like them to all take a moment to introduce themselves. So, Alexis, could you introduce yourself because you're next to me on the.
Hi, I'm Alexis Sarah. I'm a writer and yeah, I write comics and TTRPGs mostly. I wrote on Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Uh yeah, and I do all sorts of stuff. I'm gay. I'm a lesbian. So there we go.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Sai, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name is Sai Catwell, and I am a Japanese to English localization editor, who does a lot with manga and light novels, as well as just like a general freelancer. I'm your local, like, cool trans dude, just kicking it. And yeah, I'm just super, super queer and super arrow ace in a gender, and it's wonderful.
Mhm. Tiff, could you introduce yourself, please?
Totally. My name is Tiff. I also go by Pants online, so a lot of people will refer to me as such. I'm of the non-binary variety, identify as they, them, and I'm an illustrator, so I do a lot of smaller projects. Recently worked on something called Open Mats, which is available on a variety of different platforms. I'm sure you can find it on there somewhere. But yeah, and I'm just stoked to be here. This is an exciting time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's wonderful to have this opportunity to talk to you all about trans in Yuri, mainly because when I got this idea dropped on me, I was like, ooh, I should ask people, because I was like, I can't run this panel. I'll ask someone who knows a lot about trans in Yuri. And I asked to most of my friends, and the responses I got were the lines of, is there trans representation in Yuri? It's like, does it really exist? So perhaps the first thing I'd like for the panel to address is this idea of is there like no trans characters in Yuri? No trans Yuri made by trans creators or anything? Because the way people responded it to me, it was like, oh, there's nothing. And I felt, no, that can't be true.
Yeah, so I will say I don't think it's true. I think we're living in a really interesting time where it's a work in progress. Like, I think as gender is kind of broadening, and as our understanding and kind of public facing understanding of sexuality are evolving, I think like the 2020s are really going to provide a lot of trans in Yuri. Like, I really hope to see more trans feminine and like trans women in Yuri. I'm all here for like the he him lesbian revolution that should happen in Yuri. But I think it's there. I think it's just a matter of like we are kind of in the experimental, like shifting to that broader perspective part,
Mm.
which is hard to be
Yeah.
in, right? Like you want it now.
Yeah, I think it exists, and it really depends on how widely we define Yuri, and then how, like, right, like if we go Yuri is any media made with a sapphic undertones, then yeah, there's lots of Yuri with trans people in it. But if we're like niching down, right, like the specific when someone thinks of Yuri, anime, manga, light novels, and web comics, web novels, then we start to get that. And there is, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is basically it's especially for people that have that awareness of it. It is there and does exist already within the Yuri fandom. But it is kind of one of those things too that it's experiencing growth right now that I don't think anybody's ever really seen before, which is super exciting. So
Yeah.
Mm. So this is interesting then. So I'm going to have to be the person who feels the oldest, because I would say that one of the earliest like seminary sort of Yuri texts, which would be also like Sojo text in general, which is Rose of Versailles, has a big trans feel to it with the character of Lady Oscar. And
Yeah.
here you have, like, I mean, it's different. It's not how perhaps we in the 2020s would like to talk about gender, but for something that was written in the 1970s, I think it's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I would say like it still holds up as a really good example, right? Because I think like when it comes to wanting to see transness in Yuri, like there's a part of it of like I want it to be well done, but also like older examples that aren't perfect still matter a lot. Like there's still kind of part of that heritage and that like kind of storied history of, yeah, like these still matter. These are still examples we can look to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, then, speaking of further examples, Sailor Moon. If you go to like the original manga of Sailor Moon, Haruka is talked about in a very non-binary sort of way, particularly for the time, where they openly. I think isn't. Oh God, it's it's Mitsuru, it's Sailor Neptune who says like Sailor Uranus has the heart of both a man and a woman in it, which is sort of like a thing where you think, oh, later on, if this had been made in a different time, they would just say Uranus is non-binary.
Yeah, it's very like she was very in the spirit of like the classic magical girl and like God, what am I forgetting the name? Like the first magical girl, I'm
Princess
forgetting
Knight?
her.
Are you thinking of Princess Knight?
Yeah, like Princess Knight, right? Like that was like literally her thing, right?
Yeah, born with the heart of a boy and a girl.
Yeah. So, definitely Sailor Moon, I thought, does it in an interesting way. And in Crystal, animation be damned. This third season did better, and that's when Haruka actually showed up, and they use that line is in there. They keep in the line about her, having the heart of a man and a woman. So we definitely get some of that, even if like her outfits are a little femmed up in the Crystal version. But I think I think she's great, and obviously she's beloved by many a Yuri fan to this day. So I still my feed is full of Haruka and Misuru art all the time. Like
that, I think that is kind of one of those like, is there trans representation like in like anime and manga? Like that's kind of the clinch right there, is like it's there, because I think people who are going through their own experience as trans individuals will pick up on that. Like they have some kinship towards certain characters, or they find there's some commonality there that helps them express themselves, or himself or herself, like, and that's what makes it so awesome, right? Is that you can a lot of times, like, there's just, even if it's just like an inkling or something that you can kind of like connect with through those characters. I mean, the representation isn't always what we would, especially now, want it to be, but it's still there in some elements. And, we want to have that. Like people want to find those connections and some sort of like community in that art. And that's what makes it really cool. So it's there, but at what level, I guess, is the big question. And like, how do we want to see that progress into the future? And what do we want to offer as people in the community now, trying to give more to like the Yuri fandom, right? So yeah.
Well, I guess. Okay.
No, I was gonna say, just like when we're talking about like older manga, not like super old. This is I think it came out in 2006. Double House, was a Yuri with trans character. It's not, again, like it's not Yuri in the way that a lot of people want Yuri to be now, and that like people want them to kiss and for it to be much more explicit. But the transness is explicit.
Well, Double House is a very.
I literally just started watching that.
Double House by Haruno Nanai. Like I quite like that one because the trans character in that has to deal with the life of being a trans woman in Japan, where she is noticed because of how tall she is. She pretty much has to work at a bar, a very specific hostess bar just for trans women that men frequent, and like she is like incredibly jaded by her life, and it's only by meeting the other character that they sort of she gets a little bit more positivity in his life. And I Double House I put, because of course it was recent, so it was after I was born, so it's not old. It was after I was born. I think it's actually pretty good because you have someone who actually lives an actual trans life. This is like actual trans content, whereas not something where we're just deferring.
Right.
Feel bad now that means feels we skipped over mentioning Saya and the other Starlights in Sailor Moon, because I feel they have an
Yeah.
even more of a trans thing, and I always feel bad that they always get skipped over.
Yeah, I think they get skipped over because they're in this like weird zone of like in the manga, they're just the gender is just that's them disguising themselves because alien. They're always women 100% of the time. It was only in the anime release. I think in the Cosmos movies, the new ones, they are again that because it's closer to the manga. There's yeah, I'm a girl 100% of the time. Just we're doing a butch thing.
Yeah, they just explicitly say we just pretend to be guys to be idols, whereas in the other one they are. And I liked that interesting gender conflict in the anime where you have Saya, weirdly enough, like two different flavors of jerk. I also really like Saya just because of how much drama he introduces. And because Mamoru isn't there, the person who has to be the protective boyfriend is Haruka. So like seeing Haruka and Saya almost always come to blows is very I didn't get the idea of who wants boys to fight over them, but it's like, what if these two fought over you? And I understand that now. Yeah.
Well, and something that was said just now too kind of made me think. I think also transness in Yuri is going to change as Japan's kind of laws and culture around like LGBTQ issues change, because I think as it stops being a more like, hey, it's cool if you are a part of this community, part of this group, but like, don't really ask for laws, don't really be vocal about it. As that becomes less and less tolerable, I imagine we'll see that reflected in Yuri, right? Like, you'll have more people that just naturally feel encouraged to like dive on in and, put their own experiences, put the experiences of their friends or people that they look up to kind of in print.
Yeah. Yeah. Outside of like this conversation, me and Ashley had actually talked about this just like on and off conversation. Something that we were talking about was like how like also most media is being made by cis people.
Right.
And so like the way that cis people interpret trans people is an important factor when like they have access to the ability to tell stories in the first place. And a lot of cis people see trans people as being inherently straight. Like, why would you be trans if not to do heterosexuality?
Right.
Like, and I think that like shows up in that like when you see trans people typically in media across every like a lot of global media, they'll usually be straight, even though like if we look at like what is it, the trans equality like a survey of sexuality and lots of other surveys, I can't pull up all the statistics, like 60% of trans women identify as being attracted to women, and I think like several percent decline to answer. So right, even if all the 10% who decline to answer also are straight, that's still more than half would, right? And obviously a lot of trans mass people, I think it was also like 57%, I don't remember offhand, but it was a high percent, right, that would identify as some kind of a bi or gay. So like, again, it is like the trans people are queer on the whole. Mostly straight people are actually the minority in our community, but it's we're the majority of representation. Like straight people are the majority of representation in the media because the cis gays kind of casts heterosexuality on us.
Yeah, I feel weird saying this, but it's almost like we kind of need a queering of like the writer's room so that like we can, because like I'm all for like the wide spectrum of transness. I think it's necessary because you're right, like a lot of times trans people are depicted kind of along the same, we're depicted along the same binary that a lot of us are trying to shift away from, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, right. Like we have to do the trans story that we have to tell the therapist to get the pills, right? When I was this age, I wanted this toy, and this toy made me want to be the gender, and I was very sad. And And now I want pills. Thank you.
Right.
Surgery, thank you.
Fairly accurate.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that is true. And even within sort of there's like the things that I immediately think of when I think of trans creators of manga is autobiographical stuff done by trans women who are often also straight by just, I think that's due to selection, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have The Bride is a Boy.
Mm.
We have there was another one that had a name that I can't immediately pick out about, and
Yeah,
but that was about going to Taiwan for surgery. It's like
I remember
it's all
that, but I
stuff
don't
that
remember the
cis
name.
people want to consume.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think there's still like the struggle of like cis people kind of want the neat and tidy trans story, and they don't want like the, maybe you're trans, but like you want it. For me, like I'm trans and agender, like, and that's where I want to sit. I don't necessarily want to be. I don't want to pick a gender, but like that's not a neat and tidy presentation. And like I think in the context of autobiographical manga or Yuri manga, that's also not right. Like
Mm.
a really neat package. It doesn't, what kind of ending is that going to have?
Mhm.
But I want that. I want more of that kind of like messy middle, because that's where most people sit in.
Mhm.
Like most people's lives are very rarely like a neat and tidy package.
Yeah, like even me, look at like I'm hyper femme. Here's pink on my wall. I would be painted pink if I didn't live in an apartment. I'd be a Barbie girl, be who you want to be Barbie girl. Like I still don't like think that I'm like a perfect example of a like right, I'm a lesbian, first of all. Which it's not. But like I'm also just like I just like I don't even feel like my gender's the same as straight cis women. Like when I talk with straight cis women, I'm like, I don't think that we have the same gender. When I talk to
Right.
other lesbians, I'm like, yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, this is that me and you, we're the same. I feel this. But yeah, it's and that kind of expression, right? Like if I was trying to get acceptance from cis people, I had to be like, no, I'm just like all the girls. Like, we're the same bestie, girly, let's go. Um, but it's right. We have to kind of curate our narratives in that way, and it makes it hard for us to like, even when we're making our own art, because we have to think about that conditional acceptance and like how that'll affect us. I definitely feel that as like a person who writes comics, like I did comics for a long time, and then I shifted to TTRPGs. But like I definitely like right when I'm talking to like the gatekeepers of making art, I'm like, okay, how do I get you? Like, and I often the editors were also queer, so they wanted, but they had to tell their cis white guy boss who doesn't like right. How do I sell it to him? You got to give me something, Alexis, and then we'd be talking and going over it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we sell this to someone? And yeah, so you get in those situations where like the mess has to be cleaned up. You got to clean
Yeah.
up the mess and give it the prettiest version of you or of that community.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Making
we
it
often get to that
palatable.
most acceptable trans narrative,
Yeah.
right? It's like I am the most acceptable for the narrative that we're telling, which is why like it defaults to like the majority race of this country, and then straight and everything else, right? They're probably a Christian if they're in America. Like, I don't know, like the Lord made me this way, thank you. Like because like we have to kind of like and everything else is normal. This is the one thing that's weird about that.
It'll be interesting to see how that shifts in the next like 5 to 10 years. Again, kind of like Cypress was saying, like you're gonna see this like for the people who consume Yuri media, and like as I think smaller artists and writers start to become more active, like people who are from the queer community that are putting into the art and the stories and all of that stuff that is being consumed, whether it's like for small press or for larger companies, like where that's going to start to lead, because you're going to start to see a lot less of that binary packaging and that sort of like compacted storyline that's like palatable or consumable by people. And you're going to start to see a lot more of those messy in between stories that I think a lot of people actually generally connect with. I know for me personally, those were the stories that I was like, I don't understand all of it, but there's a lot of it that I really like, so I'm totally gonna like gravitate towards this. And then I found more through that, which is great, right? And I mean, I guess that's kind of why we're here too, right? So
Yeah. I mean, do you have any examples or anything that was sort of
I mean, like I'm more of a dabbler in most like of my consumption. Like I tend to just sort of say like this is something that I really enjoy, or this is something that I really enjoy, and do it that way. But as a youth, I think for me it was like kind of trying to find that balance between the things that I felt like I was supposed to enjoy and the things that I genuinely enjoyed, if that makes sense. So, especially in like the anime industry, well, first of all, that was just new for my entire generation. Like I was born in the early 80s, so it was like, what's this random thing? I think one of the biggest ones for me was Revolutionary Girl Utena. That was probably a big one. And like there was just this like perfect melange of two completely different ideals, and I don't know, it just really struck a chord with me, so I quite enjoyed it.
I mean, I would say like we can even there's even like some Western animation that's starting to push that a little. Like the first thing that came to mind for me was She-Ra. I mean, who has a trans man lead, like in Indy Nate Stevenson. I mean, you know, and you can tell like that kind of enters because you have characters that are non-binary. You have characters that are like you could read as being trans masculine, and like so I think like it's already starting because people want it. Like people want something that mirror, you know, you don't want to sit down and watch something that's so opposite the experience you've had. And I do think like especially in manga, as like people enter doujinshi and start doing fan works, you know, which you can kind of have free reign, you're just going to naturally see more of these stories. I think, you know, there's certainly a population of the world that's like, oh, we don't want them, it's bad and it makes me uncomfortable. Well, like, too bad. It's out there and it's gonna keep being out there. It's not going anywhere. It's only gonna get more.
So I'm glad someone brought She-Ra up, because it is two things that always remind me of She-Ra. One is how very clearly trans masculine Catra is adopted by a lot of the fandom. I know I follow a lot of artists, and one particular artist, I wish I could just say their name off the top of my head, who is like non-binary trans masc and draws a lot of very trans masc looking Catra. You know who I'm talking about, Tiff, right? And
I might.
Yeah. And also, if you have read any of ND's comics about himself and about how he feels, like that you wouldn't really get when you see him in person, but you see in his comics like the sort of flow of emotion from is like, and how self-destructive that can be. And I remember reading that and going, that's all Catra. That like Catra really does feel is probably ND's in that whole show.
Yeah, I think Catra's a fun example of like the trans woman, trans masc. Like I see a lot of trans women with, you know, Catra PFPs, especially around when She-Ra was coming out. It's right, like again, the trans people kind of gravitating to the messier character, going like, I get these kind of complicated and messy emotions, like this,
Like
like
a real
all
person.
this mess. Yeah, and I mean, I think like if we're talking about like kind of like stuff that's happening, like in terms of like indie Yuri stuff and like trans rep, like we should definitely mention Boyish, Butch X Bush Yuri anthology. Like that has, you know, non-binary mangaka that's leading up the project, and a lot of, you know, transness is going on here in the creators and in the work. I think I should just grab me a copy of Boyish. Here we go.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of Boyish too, because like one of the things that I struggle with Yuri is like the kind of girl prince trope where it's like, oh, this girl is so handsome, and I'm like, oh, if only like maybe this person could be like trans masculine, or maybe not. Like I think everyone should be able to shape their gender as what it is to them, but you know, I would like the opportunity, the chance, you know.
Yeah. Then I don't know if you ever saw this one. This by the same person who did, but my date is a
Yeah.
total EK woman. Where one is non-binary.
Okay.
So you've got like, yeah, you've got just the oh no, this shininess too much for that. But yeah, there's a character who's they're both like quite butch, and like one character is a woman, one's non-binary, and they just go on a fun date.
Oh, I like
And
that.
it's cute. It was fantastic.
It's very cute.
One of the best things that's arrived for me this year.
Yeah, so like so when we're talking about things progressing, like we're definitely seeing that, right? Like that small press push.
Mhm.
So this is the
Using
thing is
Kickstarter. It's right now on Kickstarter, Boyish 2.
Yeah.
It's like 37 days left. I don't know when this will get posted, but as of us talking, it's getting money. So that's great. We're gonna get some bank. It looks like it's got funded. I think it got funded. Yep, it's funded, which is great. Fantastic. So that means there's gonna be some more good stuff. Obviously, I haven't read it. It's not out. I can't say how trans it is, but clearly that's in the head of multiple of the creators there. So I think we could definitely see some good stuff there with some good non-binary lesbian action. And we stand that. We love it. I'm here for it all day long. Yeah. And I think that like we definitely see some other like trans vibe kind of like webcomic stuff. A lot of stuff, and especially like in the gender bender stuff. Now we're seeing a lot more transgender bender stuff as the people who read that stuff growing up had feelings from that. Like gosh, a manga about a hero who pulled out the holy sword and became a girl. Like that manga, she is gay and the sword turns you into your ideal self, and that happens to be a girl.
Right.
For her. And then she transes other people's genders in the course and dates multiple women. It's just like a gag series, but like it's cute. It's a cute little webcomic on Pixiv. And we definitely see a lot of that. I think that's maybe something worth talking about, the gender bender stuff and kind of like the gender body politics in trans Yuri right now, because I think there's a lot of gender politics and like body politics of like, when are you a woman and when are you gender?
That is like one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because it's like even in the stuff that we really like, it has this sort of aversion for like for getting the idea that really trans people, I like to think we as trans people inherently get, where it's like the body isn't anyone's business. It's like, can't you just accept them when they tell you it? And it's like the one that will pick the really good book series, I Fell in Love with the Villainess, really, really good.
Yeah.
2 really, really awesome trans female characters in it, but both of their happy ending is like, my body was it's like, yeah, well, I am weak. If someone said, yeah, I can magically do it, would I jump to it? Yes, but that's not the world we live in. And it's like, it's just like, well, why are you so afraid to accept people when they tell you what they are and just let them be who they are? It's like, why do they have to be fixed to have this body? That it's kind of irritating, because it's the two things. It's like, well, don't you want this body actually? Yes. But I don't like the idea of a cis person sort of like coming in and saying, well, yeah. Once you do that, then it's real. It's like, it's real now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it is kind of fitting the like prevailing politic of like, you're not a woman until you get this surgery, or you're not a whatever until this. This is when you become other gender. You have to do X, Y, Z, and once you've done it, now you get to be considered really a woman, really whatever. And we don't want to have that kind of biological essentialism. Obviously, it's a fantasy for a lot of us to magic and gender, be shapeshifter, and I can change how I look every day, and whatever I'm feeling, like, oh, you know what, I'm feeling a little dysphoric about this. No, I'm not.
Right.
That's gone. That's different. being perceived the way that we want to be perceived. And shapeshifting is a very great fantasy for that, right? Like our ability to fully control ourselves, or, right, being magically transformed to be our ideal self. That, is just not possible unless we're rich and have like a million surgeries. And most of us aren't rich. I certainly am not.
I can't even pluck my eyebrows by myself. I need to find someone to do it for me. I can't do it standing in front.
You said villainous, and it made me think, because I know the creator of Villainous is trans. And like,
Yes.
I think it's really something that I haven't read it, but my roommate loves this series. And one thing that I often think about is like, that's kind of the last hurdle, is like the bioessentialism we all have. Because, we all grow up in the society of like, when you were a kid, for the most part, most of us were told like, you're a girl or you're a boy. And that's, I'll be real, until I got on Tumblr, that's how I thought the world was. And I hope that that's kind of a hurdle we can overcome in the next few years, because like, for some people that is important. And to a degree, I don't want to take that away, because I wouldn't want someone to take away what's important about gender to me. But also, it's that, but also, like, because I also see it a lot working with light novels. Like light novels, there's a whole subgenre of like, I'm a 30-year-old Japanese dude who gets reincarnated as like a hot babe of a priestess or like a witch. And I always wonder, like, okay, what's like happening behind the scenes for this author? Like, what's going through your head? Like, I mean, me too. Like, I would love to be reincarnated as like a cool merchant guy, but like, what's happening? And it's funny because some of the authors in like their afterword, they'll be like, yeah, like this is my ideal body if I were a girl. And I'm like, well, we live actually, you could
do it.
Like, there's nothing stopping you.
Did they just inadvertently open a door for themselves by saying that, though? Like, that whole exploration, like, I'm gonna make this media and then explore my own sexuality at the same time. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, like, you see it a lot, because like I've noticed there's not a lot of like, I was like a high school girl and I got reincarnated as like a buff dude. It's a lot of like, I'm a 30-year-old salary man who lives by himself, and I get reincarnated as like a teenager and I can live out my dreams. And I do love it. I do love it, because it is kind of exploratory. Like, maybe it's doing something that, like they don't have the accessibility to.
The thing I had to ask about this is, where is the trans masculine Isekai fulfillment? Where is that I was reincarnated as like the cool prince? Like, well, I mean, make it even like Otome, like I was reincarnated as the cool prince. It's like, maybe there's Danmei about it, like the famous one, the scum villain self-serving thing. It's not trans, but the dude is reincarnated as like the sexy villain of a cultivation novel. Where's the trans version of that?
I'm telling you, y'all, I'm waiting on for like Reborn in Another World with really nice top surgery scars. Like, I'm just waiting. Where is it? Because and I just have to imagine maybe that'll come soon. Like, maybe someone out there is writing it right now.
So here's the thing. But what form will that take? Because I do get the feeling that the reason we see a lot of this trans feminine stuff is because of just the appropriation of the female body. Like, a feminine body is immediately turned into like a commodity, and it's like, you can sell this to, you can sell it to some of the trans people, but there's a lot more irritating dudes that you can sell that to who won't buy the, I was a 16-year-old hockey player and then I became this incredibly buff axe barbarian, and my hockey skills allowed me to get to level 100. I literally just saw that up. I need to write that down.
Yakuza dude.
I was gonna say, I love that title. No, I mean, because I feel like when you reverse it, right, I still feel like there's a problem of, especially if you're trans masculine and not becoming like a trans man, of being perceived to some degree as like woman light or just like really butch. And so like, I do have to wonder, like, when it comes time to like, okay, how are we going to have trans masculinity perceived? I do worry that it's just going to be like, oh, they're just really butch, when like is the character gonna have to say, I am trans? Like, are they gonna have to say it outright?
This
Versus
is what really scares me, is because this so often seems to be put on transmasculine people. It's for some reason it's fine if you're trans feminine to transform as long as you're hot, which is like another horrible, painful thing.
Yeah.
But like, I feel really bad for like the transmasculine people who, no matter how hard they try, they get treated really badly. And of course, that is brought up in like the incredibly good Our Dreams at Dusk, which is like,
Yeah.
that's the book where it's like it has all of the queer in just one lump. And I'm like, if I could offer one queer manga to someone, it would be Our Dreams at Dusk.
Yeah.
And the transmasculine character in that is fantastic because he runs into all of these problems. He's just this cool dude. He just helps people, and then when he runs into people from his past, they treat him like crap because they just
Oh,
assume
they're so horrible.
such like, that's such a cathartic panel they brought up. And of course, this is unsurprisingly, oh, why, it's written by a transmasculine person, so of course they understand what's going on. But yeah, like, he, you know, he screams while he's having this, while he's cycling in this thing. This is another like panels of whole side tangent for Our Dreams at Dusk. The use of imagery to express catharsis, even negative catharsis, in that manga is perhaps some of the best I have ever seen. You just 100% feel it. It's like, part of me now thinks about, why doesn't he get any cool images, actually, now that I think about it? The main character got all weird UFO symbolism for when he was realizing his sexuality.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, right? Is it Our Dreams at Dusk is by a trans masculine person. So like, is it going to be incumbent on just kind of trans masculine people who aren't, you know, I don't have a really intimate understanding of sexuality in Japan because while I was living there, I was not very public about my gender identity, and I didn't really talk about my sexuality because I did work at a high school, and I always kind of had this like simmering fear of being perceived as different or not being taken seriously. But like, you know, my understanding is like a lot of I don't think trans men really have kind of a space. And I mean, I think that's kind of a global thing that is a struggle. But I a part of me is like, well, yeah, it's probably going to be incumbent on masculine trans men to write that into Yuri, but also like I want to see lots of people try and also contribute to that narrative in the same way I want to see that happen for like trans feminine and trans women in Yuri too. And like the whole spread of genders, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. That was the thing.
And
so
I think
yeah,
ultimately it's like it's on us to make the rep for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just the reality of it. And I think I mean, I prefer to read trans stuff by actual trans people. But it also runs into that problem where like trans people become side characters. Like, we're exclusively like the friend character in the back, like, right? We talked about I'm in love with the villainess. The trans characters are both not like main romantic interest, they're side characters. And you know, it's rare for the trans character to be in the front, unless again it's written by a trans person, or it's like a gender bender story and they're like trans, but you know, there's weird gender like, I think if we're going to talk about like gender bender stuff, like Keshi Meshi, Girl Meets Girl, that one's, you know, the classic gender bender Yuri. You're like, very clearly there's transness. She chooses to continue to live as a woman, given the choice to turn back into a boy. You know, obviously there's the Pollock, right, would just be a woman no matter which body she picked, but if that's, but you know, whatever. It's metaphorically on the level of choosing to assimilate or to like, right, but it's really choosing to assimilate in one way or another, in terms of body politics. But yeah, like that kind of like, we're gonna get, so we get some of that, but that is like clearly not going to be the majority of the representation. We're going to see us hanging out in the side, and a lot of times, even in worlds that are supposedly queer, we're not going to see ourselves mentioned. Like G-Witch, Gundam the Witcher Mercury, mentions that being gay is normal, but then you don't see anyone be gay, and there's no trans people at all. You know, we see a lot of body diversity, but we don't see like someone who is clearly trans. Like as far as we know, everyone says now we could assume everyone is trans. We could, but like, right? There's
Want them to
no
say it.
indication that like, yeah,
So
limited fantasy.
this did cause me to like search my whole collection to see if I could find something that would give us a positive thing. And I will say, weirdly enough, despite the fact that she's not always perfect, Wandering Sun by Takuko Shimura does at least end with a trans woman in a relationship with another woman at the end. But I have to immediately circumvent that with the thing of like that the trans masculine character gives. Yeah, in all fairness, that should be fine because people can change. People can decide that they are trans and then sort of pull back and change it. But as the thing of because there's so little, that still makes me go, oh yeah,
Yeah. I talk about this all the time when I'm like talking to other people and I've done like diversity consulting and stuff. I'm like, queer reality isn't queer fiction. And I'm like, we want it to be. And when you're queer, you do it, go for it. But when it's not in your lane, then you need to use best practices. You can get messy, but you need to really, really think about every little thing you do when you're getting messy. Because, you know, like, yeah, it is true that some people who identify as lesbians later come out as bi, but you can tell that story in a way that sounds like lesbians become straight at some point.
Yeah.
That story can sound like that, you know, right? Or you can tell like a story about someone detransit some people detransition, or, you know, some people transit, like, right, go, like a lot of people. I know as a trans woman, I know lots of people who identified as trans women and then later identified as non-binary. They didn't detransition. They just were like, you know what? Gender. Fuck it. Like once dysphoria was gone, they're like, wait, this doesn't fucking matter to me. Like I just hated these XYZ about my body. And like once I was there, now I'm good with any pronoun. I'm good with anything.
Yeah.
We're good. Like, and it's like, right. So like it's complicated, but you need to be equipped to tell the complicated story. You need to give it the time, the breath, the internality, and like other people, right? You put the weight on one character when you only have one trans character, right? You go like, here's the weight of the world. This is you. You are the trans who exists. And you represent this for everyone else who exists in the real world. So again, I hope you enjoy being the non-binary. You are them.
Thinking about that,
how everyone will think of you who watches this.
Yeah, Alexis, you've reminded me then again, another one, sadly not Yuri, which makes me feel a bit bad, but of course, Love Me for Who I Am had a load of different characters of different genders in that one, different like non-cis genders.
Yeah, it's a lot of it does exist outside of Yuri, and like it's slowly like trickling in.
This is the thing, it's like there's actually been loads of really good trans stuff on occasion that you can find across the thing. Like going back to another one that was early would be Tsukasha Hojo, who famously wrote City Hunter, also wrote Family Compo, which has a T for T couple in it, and they're the bedrock couple. I mean, they're a straight couple, but it's like it's a trans woman living with a trans man, and who also the trans masculine dude has a load of women who are his manga assistants who are all trans women.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like, so strictly speaking, Hojo Sensei is a dude, but you can look up a lot of stuff of Hojo Sensei talking about what he thinks about when he draws beautiful girls, because he draws a lot of beautiful girls as a thing, and it's like there's something. People have always, because he says, what was he? I believe the one I recall off the top of my head is he says, well, when I'm drawing beautiful girls, I always just feel sad that I was not born a beautiful girl. So this is the closest I can get, is drawing all these beautiful girls. And I'm just like, dude.
I was gonna say,
he's like, it would be fine. Just put some foundation on once and see how you feel.
Yeah. In terms of good trans Yuri, I can mention one. We want to get positive here near the end.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I had one that I was going to mention that wasn't positive. Let's skip it. Let's throw my negativity out there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
ball it up. I'll toss that one. Let's get to the good one.
Mhm.
So in Mermaid Line, which is an anthology of Yuri stuff, there was a story called Ayumi and Akia, and it was published in 2009. I think I could be wrong. I I didn't read it when it came out. I read it later. So, but it has a trans girl in it, and we like open with her breaking up with her girlfriend. But she's breaking up because she thinks like, okay, well, clearly she's not going to want to be with a girl, but she later is coming to get her stuff out of the house, and she like comes and sees her, and they like, she's like, oh, I'm a lesbian, like, and like she straight up says like, I'm a lesbian. She uses the actual word that's so rare in Yuri in general, very increasingly common, but just in 2009 that was not happening very often. um so like, right, and they get back together and they're dating, and like at the end of it, like they're talking about the relationship and like about like they like, right, it's very realistic in that, again, like Double House, she has to work at a bar because she's trans, she's visibly trans, she's in the process of transitioning. The job she can get is working at a hostess bar. um but you know, she's treated as a woman nicely, as a desirable object by a cis woman. You get both their perspectives. There's two chapters, and you get the cis woman's perspective and the trans woman's perspective over the course of the story, and that's like, you know, a great way to go, like, look, she sees her as desirable, and she sees like, right, you get to humanize her by letting her be a perspective character. She's not just like a fetishized object, because she gets to be the protagonist for an equal amount of pages.
Mhm.
But you know, we also get to see her like, right, because that's a thing that happens in a lot of that, like, you know, you want to see the trans person be desirable
Right.
to like, right, to people. You don't want to just see like, oh yeah, trans people, like they're right, because cis people have a lot of bad faith arguments about trans people and our desirability. So we want to kind of, you know, we want that, and I think it was really cute. It was really beautiful. It's two chapters, so it's a very quick read.
Mm.
But yeah, it was really nice, and I definitely think that like I'd love to see more stories like that, and I'd love to see more fantasy stories, right? I'd love to see I'm in love with the villainesses that
Mhm.
have, you know, I I became a tea girl with 1,000-foot sword, and have to slay the giant dragon of patriarchy or whatever, right? I'm here for it, and then like all trans gay cast. I want it. Why not? A bunch of people. Why don't a bunch of trans people get isekai at once? That'd be a great story. Me and everyone at the trans event got isekai into a fantasy world, and now it's up to us to save the world.
Who was driving
You know,
that
why not?
truck?
I was I was gonna say what kind of truck will like truck hit and where can I go? Like,
Yeah, I want to go to that truck. I want to write that story. I'm noting it down, writing it in my doc. If I write comics again, isekai, but everyone is trans and gay.
love it. Love
I
it.
would read that.
Oh.
Just realized that's true. So we've been talking about like stuff that we go to. Is there anything that has yet to be mentioned that the panel would like to bring up as like their comfort series for like, oh, this thing gets my gender? Because we're talking around it a bit, but like something that is there something that any of you go to that is like, oh, this got it for me, not for like in the general trans thing, but for your feelings about it.
I feel like Nagata Kabi
Oh.
gets it. Especially in which like Nagata Kabi is not writing Yuri. Nagata Kabi is opening up so much about their life. But like in their most recent volume, they talk about gender and like feeling kind of not like a woman. And I was like, yeah, like you get it. Like, because you know, being especially for me being raised as a Black woman, did a number on my ability to like shift from my, you know, my assigned gender at birth. But like I feel like a lot of like autobiographical manga, they're getting it. They understand the gender. Like they know what I'm feeling.
Sorry, I'm literally looking this up right now because I
Okay.
want to read it.
No, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. Alexis, do you have one? Or is
Yeah. So like, right, I think when I most feel seen is using tabletop role-playing games. That's definitely like when I'm the most seen because I get to make the story. Um, and definitely Thirsty Swords Lesbians, I wrote and worked on it. So, bias, tomatoes, boo boo. Um, you know, but like it's written by like all trans people contributed in the main book, like for writing. April, the main writer, is trans, and then all of everyone who contributed a setting inside of there, I think all of us were trans and BIPOC, like all of us were. So like, right. So we had some like, good multi-perspective like that. Definitely is like a Yuri adjacent thing that I feel seen by. It's about being sapphic and like it was very trans. So I definitely felt very seen by that in a way that like I don't normally feel by media because I tend to have a hard time feeling seen, like being Latina and trans and a lesbian and asexual and disabled and like I'm so many things. Is like, and I don't need all of them, but even like right and polyamorous and like right, so like I'm like, yeah, but then like you lost me at the monogamy. It's like so monogamous that I'm like, I just don't like I don't under that feeling isn't a feeling that I understand or whatever. So like I have a hard time, but I think I definitely feel like in like gender Yuri vibes. Like I'm a big Fire Emblem fan. I definitely feel like in the like I want to be a cool warrior woman. And in the recent games you can kiss girls. So there's that. I definitely feel like in the Byleth and Fire Emblem Three Houses terrible hot topic fashion if you're girl Byleth. Like I could feel that, like that terrible outfit, that's T-Girl's first outfit. That's I grabbed the first stocking. I get it. I probably had that outfit. I s- so I like that one. I definitely felt like yeah, I want to kiss the revolutionary communist red lady. Yes, I do. I do want to do that. That was gender and sexuality vibe for sure. Yeah, there we go. That's my answer.
Oh, Tiff, do you have the
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if I mean, I, I honestly can't nail it down to overall for me, it's usually in the fandom's hands, and that can be extremely dangerous sometimes. But a lot of the stuff that writers and illustrators who, again, will take something and then they just they just kind of deep dive into like one part of that series, and I think that that's great. I usually swing wildly between like shonen variety and seinen, and then like magical girl way off in the corner. But still, all of them, like I like them all equally, and I tend to just dabble in whatever. Recently, because I was laid up, I was trying to go through some old favorites, and it's not really actually old, but Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is like kind of a comfort anime for me. So I kind of leaned into that, and I think that there are some explorations of some of those characters that kind of resonate with me, which I thought was really cute. And I don't know if it would be classified as Yuri really strictly, but I think there are some deep feelings in that show that I can kind of vibe with. So
Mm.
yeah.
I'll also say I think even though like I am not a lesbian, I don't identify as any kind of sapphic, I do still find a lot of comfort in Yuri for like the potential it has and for the ability that it has to be more, and it continues to be more. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, teenage me never would have thought that I would see like a butch anthology, because like I'm all about some butch x butch love. Like I think it's great, because I think a lot of the media we get is like femmes loving femmes, or like a femme with a butch, but like I want just like two butches to smooch. It's great. That's revolutionary. And like I like, I mean, I think Yuri has a lot of potential to become something really emotionally powerful, even more than it already is.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it's all,
Yeah.
I think even the stuff that is like a little messy still matters, because like no one's identity is neat. No one's identity is like a perfect progression of like, I went from this to this and like I made no mistakes. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think Yuri is really blooming right now too. Like, it's like, no pun intended, flowers blooming. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think Yuri's really blooming right now in terms of like queerness, and I think as we're getting like right, like, Ayaka is in love with God, again, names of manga for but like right, the a gay bar is prominent in that manga, like, so a lesbian bar. So like I think we're gonna keep seeing more queerness, right? Uh like Yuri is gonna leave that kind of like queer, like is about being sapphic without lesbian identity, without queer identity at all, and really shift to being primarily about queer identity with a little bit of like the classical, like they're just two girls who kissed and they're in high school and they're besties and gay, but like they don't need a label on it, and the story ends when they're done in high school, and you don't need to hear about what's up with them after that. They're old after 18, ancient at that point. We don't need to hear about them, right? But I think that we're seeing that evolution of Yuri. I think increasingly it is becoming more common than not to have like a little bit of queerness, at least like a little bit. Like it's becoming weird for someone to not, or it used to be even rare for them to kiss. Now they don't kiss. It's weird. It feels the absence is felt of the kiss.
Yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly common for someone to say like I'm gay in some way. Maybe not I'm a lesbian. Maybe they say I only like girls, or I think girls are beautiful too, something, right? Or they affirm queerness in some way, shape, or form. We're also seeing a lot more sex in like casual stuff. Yeah, so I definitely think we're seeing the evolution to like encompass more, and we're seeing a lot more asexual Yuri, which is amazing too. Where we're seeing a lot more ace characters and that being respected, where it's not like they're asexual because it's pure and they're pure maidens who don't, women wouldn't want to ever fuck each other. But but because someone is asexual, that's just right. As an asexual lesbian, definitely like to see it. That we're valid and that we're I don't mind reading smut, but I definitely like to be seen. I like to be seen and affirmed. So it's good. And it's great that we're like evolving into that direction with stuff like She Loves to Cook and She Loves to Eat and Bloom Into You that have those kind of like, so I think we're seeing queerness expand, and I think as we keep seeing that expand, we're gonna see that growth into transness. Actually, your stuff. Sorry.
So, well, we have hit the hour mark now, so I want to wrap things up. Thank you all so very much for coming. But before we go, I want one quick thing, because as we said, as trans people, if we want to have like stuff that's like about transness, we've kind of got to make it ourselves. And we've got to make it ourselves for a small market, which means we've got to do other things. So I want to go around the panel, and if there's anything that you have made that you want to bring up, or that you like that's very recent that's coming out that you want to bring to everyone's attention, I'd like to end it on that, so that we can end with showing the, I assume, majority cis people who are coming in to find all our secrets, so that they know what they can look for, so they can have like a proper, no, they must know. They're gonna fucking learn stuff from this. They're gonna come and they're gonna see some amazing stuff that you're all gonna recommend. So Alexis, please.
Yeah. So I'm Alexis Sarah. You can find me on most places on the internet at Alexis Sarah or at Transcomics on Twitter. I make comics. I have some old stuff. You can read about like a trans vampire and a non-binary Naga lesbian couple. I wrote a book about that. I will give it to you for free. It's free money. You don't even have to pay for it. I will send it to you if you ask me for it. Send me a DM. The contract's up. They don't own any stuff. I just don't want to post it online because my artist on that book transitioned, and I don't like until we can edit the dead name out. I wouldn't want to post it. But yeah, I can like put a shitty edit of like cross out and put his name there, and send it to you. If you want lesbians, come to me. Alexis there on Tumblr. That's my main one right now. I write like articles twice a week about queerness writing, Yuri manga reviews, stuff like that. So you'll love it there. Come follow me.
Cool. Sai?
Yeah, so I mean, since we're shouting out Twitter, before it goes down, you can find me at Pixelated Lenses on most social media. I'm actually going to give you all two things. One is something that I worked on earlier this year, which I was the editor on a game jam that was an Ace game jam. And we've got lots of trans characters in there. That's right. It's called All In. It's a very card pun BDSM visual novel, and I'll make sure I give a link. It's really good, and if you like Yuri, it's got trans lesbians. I think it's January was a long time ago this year. And something I'm going to recommend like to read is actually a Western comic called Cosmonites. And it features a lot of different genders, including my favorite character that's a princess that identifies as butch. It's just so good. And I think the webcomic's ongoing, but like 2 volumes of it are out for your purchasing desires. Yeah.
I very much agree with that one. I love Cosmonauts.
It's so good and so pretty.
And Templar is amazing. Brilliant. And also root on thirsty smeared lesbians.
I'm excited. I'm excited to peek into this world.
Tiff, anything to recommend or plug? Either way's fine.
For sure. I will let you all know that I am available on Twitter for, again, however long it stays afloat. And hopefully I'll be able to get on a blue sky in the not too distant future as well. But I did mostly finish a comic that I have posted on Tapas. It is called Open Mats. It deals with girls in the martial arts world. As someone who has a significant history in martial arts, I really wanted to have more women in martial arts. So I was like, oh, I'm going to just do this myself, I guess. So that's what I did. And I actually hope to continue it in the not too distant future. So Open Mats on Tapas and Garbage Pants on Twitter if you want to check me out there. As far as things that I'm looking forward to in the future, I recently backed the Kickstarter for The Lovers. I think that that's going to be very exciting. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. You can check it out on Kickstarter. And I'm not exactly sure when they have it slated to come out, but it's a short animation about a seafood chef and her catch, which I thought was really cool.
Well, thank you all of you for coming. I can't think of a more delightful panel that I've ever had the chance to be in charge of. And I say this especially with supreme confidence for the future, because this is the first panel I've really been properly in charge of, but I'm sure that there's no panel that can conceivably top it. So I feel bad for the suckers who've got to deal with me like the next time, because they're just going to be inferior compared to all of you. This has been a delight, and I hope everyone watching for Yuricon 2023 has really enjoyed this little look to sort of a view on Yuri, and I guess we also went to like queer comics in general that perhaps doesn't get open to everyone as easily. And I hope you really take a look into everything that this panel has recommended, but also like everything that they make, because they're all wonderful creators, and I absolutely want to see more of them. Thank you very much again to our participants, and thank you very much to you for watching. I'm just holding it until... Yeah, that's enough. Okay.